Chapter 4. The Elizabethan Age, time period between 1500 to 1600. The Elizabethan Age, time period between 1500 to 1600. Origin of Elizabethan Age. This age is called Elizabethan because England was ruled by Queen Elizabeth I at that time. In between of the time 1533 to 1603. At that time, two great psychological forces were at work in English mind. One of them was an urge for the Reformation, and the other was an urge for the Renaissance. There is two R theory. First Reformation and second is Renaissance. The first great result of Queen Elizabeth's reign was an outburst of patriotism in England, and this period is also known as the age of Shakespeare. As Shakespeare was the dominant figure of this age, during this period, it was advocated that the translation of the Bible should be literacy into English. When the Bible was translated into English, the English language comes to the force sudden. Thus, in England, the Reformation in between of the time 1517 to 1558 prepared the soil for the crops of Renaissance. So the Elizabethan age is also called as the Renaissance period and Reformation period. The English Reformation took place in 16th century England when the Church of England broke away from the authority of the Pope and the Roman Catholic Church. These events were associated with the wider European Protestant Reformation, a religious and political movement that affected the practice of Christianity in Western and Central Europe. Phase of the English Reformation, which also covered Wales and Ireland, were largely driven by changes in government policy, to which public opinion gradually accommodated itself. And in a hardly post-Chaucerian Europe, the corruption of the Roman Catholic Church was rather suddenly brought to light. Those who were intellectually able enough to read hand-printed works of the time began to reason that the action of the church seemed to directly conflict with the written word of the gospel. The Canterbury Tales was often tainted by the depravity of man. In retrospect, from what seems like a fleeting comes to the movements to the turbulent epoch came a change in the entire structure of the papacy and the Christian faith. This change is now known as the Protestant Reformation. The Protestant Reformation began on 31st of October 1517, when German priest Luther posted his disputation of Martin Luther on the power and efficacy of indulgence, which otherwise became known as his 95th thesis. The thesis outlined all of the problems he had with the Catholic Church, specifically the sale of indulgence, which the church sold to sinners in exchange for forgiveness from God. The spread of the Protestant Reformation was also fostered by the Gutenberg's creation of the printing press. The Protestant Reformation hit the English monarchy out of a failed marriage. King Henry VIII was married to his brother's widow, Catherine of Aragon. The royal couple quickly consummated the marriage, however, was shortly devastated when the queen gave birth to a stillborn. The only truly successful pregnancy was their fifth, which blessed the couple with their daughter Mary. Henry grew more and more displeased with his lack of a male heir to the throne and began to find a replacement for his aging wife. After finding a Protestant woman, Anne Boleyn, the king was ready to remarry and produce a male heir. All he needed was the consent of the Pope to get a divorce. The only way to get a divorce at the time was to go through the Roman Catholic Church, which refused to grant such things without overwhelming reason to do so. After much struggle including Tsar to grant such things without overwhelming reasons to do so. After much struggles, including Tsar friendships and family relations, King Henry VIII finally married Anne Boleyn. The Reformation broke new ground in 1536 when Thomas Cromwell took charge of the dissolution of the monasteries in England, resulting in the ransacking and removal of monks in 320 monasteries across the country. having effect on society. The abrupt changes to the English society were the result of Martin Luther's attack on the Catholic religion and the Pope. The social caste system that had been based on clergy and nobility for hundreds of years began to crumble down. People began questioning the government, the church, and the authority in general. The monks and nuns were kicked out of their cloisters and possessions were sold off. Important aspect of the results of the Protestant Reformation were that sin was forgiven through faith in God instead of the sale of indulgence, and scriptures was taught in the common language instead of in Latin. The resulted in less strength of the clergy and the arguable decrease in the amount of corruption in the church system. As a result of the constant shift in religion, the Protestant Reformation affected the English society in a drastic way. The people of England were now obliged to choose between their allegiance to their ruler or their religion. After Henry VIII's death in 1547, his successors changed the religion from Catholicism to Protestantism. It was a religion tug of war between the Catholics and Protestants for many years. When King Henry VIII's son took the throne at 10 years old, Edward VI and his supervisors, the Dukes of Somerset and Northumberland, enforced Protestantism for the first time. When Edward VI passed away in 1553, he was succeeded by Mary, a devout Catholic who changed the national religion back to Catholicism. Openly Protestant believers were persecuted. They were forced to convert back to Catholicism, leave the country, or were burned at the stake. 5 long years later, when Mary first was died, her sister Elizabeth I re-established Protestantism as the Church of England's religion. However, some England people had a difficult time accepting this new religion because they were attached to the Catholicism. The Reformation was a very unsettling time to be an Englishman, especially the court. With the religion constantly switching back and forth, the people of England were left to accept whatever religion was being begged at the particular time or face death. However, if they become too adamant about the cause, they too risk execution if the tides turned, as Thomas More and Thomas Cromwell both experienced. Along with these two men, hundreds of others were executed for their religious beliefs, Catholics, Puritans, and Lutherans alike. One of the effects of the Reformation was that it evolved a kind of religion for the common people, particularly of the middle class. Therefore, the squires, lawyers, merchants, and human accepted the new faith. The Reformation, like the Renaissance, produced a new kind of thinking in the mind of the people, and the reflection of it could be seen in the literature produced after it. The Reformation also left an important mark upon English literature. It was under the impact of this movement that the authorized version of the Bible and the Book of Common Prayer was produced. Besides, the Reformation put an end to the medieval tradition of anonymous authorship. The Reformation, which begins in the time of Henry VIII, reaches the culmination during the Elizabethan age. So the influence of it is more profoundly seen in the literature of that period. Spenser's The Fairy Queens presents the best trends of the movement. The Fairy Queen is in fact a moral allegory and shows the distinct impact of the movement. Second is Renaissance period. The Renaissance is a French word which means rebirth, revival, or reawakening. The Renaissance was both a revival of ancient classical mythology, literature, and culture, as well as a reawakening of the human mind after the long sleep of the dark Middle Ages to wonder, beauty, and glory of the human body and the world of nature. Humanism was the chief characteristics of this age. The proper study of mankind was the aim of Renaissance period. Another aspect of humanism was the enhanced sensitivity to formal beauty and the cultivation of the aesthetic tone. Renaissance was started in Italy by Dante, Petrarch, and Boccaccio, that you called Boccaccio, in the 14th century. It was greatly stimulated by the fall of Constantinople in 1453 by the invention of printing in Germany. About this time, and the great discoveries of scientists and navigators followed. Sir Thomas More was the first Elizabethan who wrote under the Greek influence. book name is Utopia. New discoveries took place in several other fields, for example, circumnavigation of the Earth by Vasco da Gama, discovery of America by Columbus, and the discovery of solar system discovered by Copernicus, which even became a way for Galileo. Printing of books and systematization of art was one of the remarkable features of the period. Such a truth was the new spirit which awoke in Europe with the revival of learning. The Renaissance reached its full flowering in the Elizabethan era, and so it is also referred as the golden age of English literature. Elizabethan age. It is in this age that English prose takes significant strides forward. This period is also known as the period of the origin of modern prose. Patriotism impels an increasing number of writers to write in English, and so the dead weight of Latin is gradually lifted. Sidney and Lilly were conscious of their arts and helped English prose in flourishing itself. Patriotism and naturalism were visible. The writers took delight in the use of flowery words and graceful, grandiloquent phrases. John Lilly, Sir Philip Sidney. Elizabethan is most prolific writers in prose, John Lilly and Sir Philip Sidney. And Elizabethan age is poetry. The poets like the poems are Elizabethan lyric, Elizabethan sonnet, narrative poetry, and having the drama. Elizabethan is the golden age of drama. Some dramatists like John Lilly, Christopher Marlowe, Robert Greene, Thomas Kidd, and George Peele. Thanks.